Well, dear colleagues, we can now proceed to our next item in the agenda, and it's the EU-Azerbaijan relations. Against the backdrop of Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, Azerbaijan's role as a reliable energy partner for the EU continues to grow in importance as the Union seeks to diversify its supplies and ensure their continuity and stability. I therefore appreciate Azerbaijan's efforts and investment on the Southern Gas Corridor and the signing of an ambitious MOU with the EU last July in Baku. I also welcome Azerbaijan's support to Ukraine, especially in the initial phase of the war, and I call for it to be enhanced. Despite the increasing importance of the EU's partnership with Azerbaijan, however, I remain conscious of the country's problems when it comes to democracy and human rights. In particular, the persisting restrictions on freedom of expression and association, as well as allegations regarding torture and detainment of journalists and political activists, remain deeply troubling. In addition to this, the situation between Azerbaijan and Armenia remains tense, despite the prolonged efforts of President Michel and the hopes raised by the meetings between the countries' leaders in Brussels this year. Following the resurgence of violence in the last few weeks, the clashes have stretched beyond Nagorno-Karabakh and affected Armenian sovereign territory, which is a very worrying development. Lasting peace remains elusive and will continue to do so until a comprehensive and sustainable peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan is signed. And I remain, however, convinced that the EU can play a more active role in this context. I also welcome the talks between President Aliyev and Prime Minister Pashinyan in Prague a few weeks ago, and I am optimistic that the work of the EU civilian mission along the border of Armenia and Azerbaijan will prove successful in its goal of delineating the border. I look forward to hearing from the rapporteur and the shadow rapporteurs regarding this draft report, so that without further ado, let me give the floor to the rapporteur.
We need to wait for 1 minute. She's
okay, rapporteur Mrs. Zovko is arriving, so that we need to wait as she is arriving. Well, as Mrs. Zovko is here, yeah, so that then we don't have to switch the items in the agenda, so that we still can proceed. Good morning. Floor is yours as rapporteur for EU-Azerbaijan report. So, Mrs. Zovko, please.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry for being late. We will start. The last report of European Parliament on Azerbaijan was in 2018. Back then, we focused mainly on the negotiations of the comprehensive agreement. In the meantime, the situation in South Caucasus has changed significantly. Therefore, I propose together with Andrey Kovatchev, standing rapporteur for Armenia, to have two parallel reports on Azerbaijan and Armenia. As with every draft report, the version that I submitted is limited due to the word count, and I could not include every matter of the EU-Azerbaijan relations. Nonetheless, I present today a report that focuses on the main aspects of our relations, and I look forward to see your amendments to complete it. Azerbaijan remains a strategic economic partner of the European Union. We are close to the conclusions of the negotiations on the comprehensive agreement, which will improve our economic cooperation. The Memorandum of Understanding signed by President von der Leyen and President Aliyev allows to the EU to improve its diversification of resources and will contribute to mitigating the excessive energy prices. The EU remains a strong advocate of the respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms in Azerbaijan. I am concerned about the level of the press freedom in Azerbaijan and the continuation of repression against political activists. The report also focuses on the developments between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The text condemns the violent escalation between the two countries and calls for all parties involved to cooperate and work on peace and stability in South Caucasus. I warmly welcome the European mediation efforts and the steps made in the recent trilateral and quadrilateral meetings. Peace can be obtained via dialogue, not through the war. I also applaud the decision to deploy 40 EU monitoring experts along the Armenian side of the international border with Azerbaijan. It is paramount that both countries cooperate on the delimitation and demarcation of the borders of the sovereign territories of Armenia and Azerbaijan to avoid further military border clashes. More work should be done on inclusivity, the rights, cultures and tradition of all inhabitants of the Azerbaijan territories should be properly respected, including those people from Armenian or other ethnicities. Last but not least, I strongly call for the respect of cultural heritage, preservation, protection and promotion of shared cultural heritage can connect communities. Vandalism, descartation and disrespect breaks communities apart. I'm an amendment advocate of UNESCO mission to both countries without preconditions to take stock of the state of cultural heritage and to work with the countries towards mutual tolerance. I plan to table additional amendments to include issues that were not fully covered by the draft, and I look forward to your comments and amendments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rapporteur. And now we continue with the shadow rapporteurs. And first, Isabel Santos, please. Floor is yours.
Obrigada, Sr. Presidente. Quero primeiro saudar a apresentação.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm very pleased that you've presented this report. It's the first report in this parliamentary mandate. So this is the first time that we're presenting a report on EU-Azerbaijan relations. I think we have to bear in mind that the situation in Azerbaijan is very worrying in relation to human rights and has been covered by various resolutions of the European Parliament. As the rapporteur was saying, the human rights situation in Azerbaijan is something that should concern us. As far as I see it, this is something that should be highlighted in the report, and the amendments that I'll be tabling will be along these lines. This report focuses a lot on economic relations, which is normal given the current situation and the phase we're going through. But I feel that we're not highlighting the issue of freedom of press, separation of powers, and respecting the rule of law enough. Then, of course, is the issue of those who oppose President Aliyev. And we mustn't succumb to the temptation of only focusing on economic and trade issues and to do what Mrs. von der Leyen did when she went and signed an agreement with the autocrat, President Aliyev. So she shook his hand, but she didn't meet the Azerbaijani civil society. So I think that we must call into question how association with the EU is compatible with the human rights situation in the country. There are constant attacks against Armenia, and there are irregularities in the judicial system. and the rule of law is being flouted. So I think we have to be more demanding with our partners. We just cannot accept the atrocities that are still being committed in this country. I understand that there's a word count and the rapporteur is up against that, and so are we when we work on reports. But so I understand that in the initial report there's a maximum number of words that you can use. But I am sure that with everyone's contribution and the rapporteur's contribution included, we will end up with a final text that will be more balanced and that will underscore what is happening in Azerbaijan. Now, just to end on a more positive note, let me say the following. In the rapporteur's text, there are references to seeking a political solution in the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia that is underpinned by the Helsinki Final Act and the OSCE Minsk Group principles. I fully agree with this approach, and I think it's vital for the region. So it's about the Minsk Group and the principles in the OSCE Helsinki Final Act. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next speaker is from Renew Group, Clement Groschel. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to read a statement in the name of my colleague Ilhan Kyuchuk as a shadow rapporteur. So Ilhan would like to congratulate the rapporteur Ms. Zovko for her significant efforts in the preparation of this balanced and timely report on EU-Azerbaijan relations. The EU remains to date Azerbaijan's main trading partner, accounting for around 47% of the Caspian countries' total trade. The EU positions itself as the biggest export market and the second biggest supplier of Azerbaijan. But due to Russia's war in Ukraine, the importance of Azerbaijan as a provider of Europe's collective energy and security has increased substantially. Currently, a third of the EU member states consider Azerbaijan as their strategic partner, which is no small achievement for a country that is not part of the European Union. At the same time, this creates additional opportunities for wider cooperation. It is no coincidence that today's Azerbaijan is considered one of the most reliable suppliers of energy resources to Europe, and Ilhan is glad to see that this element is well reflected in the report. This active dialogue with Azerbaijan at the highest level in recent years has helped upgrade our relationship to strategic partnership. Of course, the main issue continues to remain the need to find a sustainable normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and this requires that all violence cease and that all the root causes of the conflict be addressed. Therefore, Ilhan, as a new shadow rapporteur, will propose some amendments to the text to improve its substance. Thank you for your attention, and Ilhan is looking forward to continuing the constructive discussion on the report with the rapporteur and shadow rapporteurs. Thank you.
Thank you, Clement. And next speaker is from Greens, Marketa Gregorova. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, dear Rapporteur and colleagues. I welcome the long-expected report on relations between Azerbaijan and EU, as it is really essential that the European Parliament finally has its voice on this subject. Firstly, I share my deep concerns and condemnation of the latest clashes between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Azerbaijan must respect the Armenian territorial integrity, and I must underline that there is no reason which can apologize for such violations. Nevertheless, I am glad that Armenia and Azerbaijan confirmed their commitment at the Prague Summit 2022, through which they both recognize each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty and are willing to work on that. I must stress that the deepening on the relations between the EU and Azerbaijan must be conditioned by respecting core values, human rights and fundamental freedoms, which is why I can't agree with the late Memorandum of Understanding under which President von der Leyen increased the amount of gas to Europe from Azerbaijan. We shouldn't lie to ourselves about the fact that President Aliyev isn't far from President Putin, and any deepening of our relations should be done on the factual, real politic of change, which so far we haven't seen. Moreover, to be candid, In Azerbaijan, there is no progress in respecting citizens' individual rights and freedom, including restriction of the internet, criminalization of libel and slander, and police brutality based on sexual orientation. There is no progress in seizing repression and abuse of the political opposition, activists, civil society organizations, bloggers, and journalists. There is no progress on the rule of law, lack of independence and impartiality of the judiciary, including arbitrary killing, torture, rape, and inhuman treatment by members of the security forces. All these are significant violations that haven't been adequately included in the report so far, which I hope we will all agree that we must also emphasize, so we are not brushing off human and individual rights and freedoms only in a few plain sentences. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to cooperation on the report.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker is from the ID group, Mr. Mariani. Not here. Any replacement? Not. So then we move to Anna Fotiga, ECR. Any replacement? No. Then Idoia Villanova-Ruiz from GUE. It's not the case. So then Mr. Castaldo, please. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear Chair. First of all, I would like to thank our Rapporteur, Mrs. Željana Zovko. Hvala, Željana, for your draft report, which touches upon several pressing issues regarding our relationship with Baku. I found the text comprehensive and well articulated, although I think there are certain parts on which we should be a bit clearer following the debate we had also in the first October plenary. I refer, for instance, to point F. Here the report states that Azerbaijan is a reliable and trustworthy supplier of fossil fuels, which is becoming increasingly relevant. While the second part is certainly true, I think we should avoid repeating the same mistakes we did in the past, creating strong and indissoluble ties with actors that do not respect at all our principles. Indeed, we should refrain from adopting an approach based only on realpolitik, standing firm for the respect of our distinctive values also in foreign policy, and therefore I deem a revision of the wording as appropriate in this case. Then, on inflammatory rhetoric, I believe that we should firmly condemn the Aliyev's use of Putin-style language as he did in the past, depicting the Armenian leadership as Nazi. We have already seen what is behind these words, and we should make it clear that we cannot tolerate these false claims that are often used as a pretext for military aggression and actions. In the same way, we cannot avoid expressing our firm condemnation for the footages and videos of the extrajudicial executions of Armenian prisoners of war perpetrated by the Azeri forces. And we should also include some references to our support for international efforts aiming to hold the responsible accountable, and also to get, finally, the prisoners that are still incarcerated in Baku finally free and back to their families. Lastly, I would like to underline that when we refer to the drafting of a comprehensive peace treaty between Baku and Yerevan, we must underline our red lines, such as the guarantee of the territorial integrity of Armenia and provisions on the safety of the population residing in Nagorno-Karabakh. As you can see, I will present a series of amendments that are also in line with those already made by other colleagues to the CFSP report. Guaranteeing synergies between our works is essential for having our voice heard, and I'm sure we will find good compromises to ensure that also in the finalization of this essential report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we listen comments from External Action Service and from the Commission. So Mr. Gianmarco Scuppa from External Action Service, floor is yours, please.
Thank you for inviting the EIS to this presentation of the draft reports on relations with Azerbaijan and then with Armenia. This is for us very timely, as the EU is now in a unique position to positively contribute to the escalation and to facilitate dialogue between these two countries to advance on a future peace treaty. The last development is the decision by member states to deploy for 2 months up to 40 monitoring experts along the Armenian side of the international border with Azerbaijan. This follows the quadrilateral meeting between President Aliyev, Prime Minister Pashinyan, President Macron and President Michel on 6 October in Prague, and is aimed at building confidence and at helping the EU to provide supports to the Armenian and Azerbaijani Border Commission. This commission will meet in Brussels at the beginning of November. And this EU monitoring capacity has already started to be deployed in record time. And this has become possible thanks to the sustained engagement at the highest level by the President of the European Council, Michel, by HRVP Borrell, but also thanks to timely and coordinated political development and humanitarian support since the beginning of the September 2020 hostilities. It has also been possible thanks to constructive bilateral relations that we have with both countries, which have contributed to enhance the capital of trust of the EU. We are now negotiating with Azerbaijan at the upgraded framework for cooperation, the new EU-Azerbaijan Comprehensive Agreement. Negotiations have not substantially progressed so far, despite the interest expressed by Azerbaijan at the highest level to rapidly conclude them. Azerbaijan is still reviewing its position on key trade provisions in particular. The rule of law and respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms continue to be at the core of our relations with Azerbaijan, as stated in the jointly agreed partnership priorities. And significant improvements are needed in these areas to meet international standards as well as commitments undertaken by Azerbaijan. The space for civil society and human rights defenders remains restricted. And the EU will continue to raise challenges related to these issues during our regular dialogue with Azerbaijan and through our delegation on the ground, which is in constant contact with authorities. In this respect, we are closely following the latest developments in the country with regards to the new media law implementation and the discussions about the new law on political parties. Finally, cooperation on energy has recently intensified with a new memorandum of understanding on a strategic partnership in the field of energy, signed on 18 July by President von der Leyen and President Aliyev. This memorandum of understanding will contribute to further diversification of natural gas supplies to Europe, as required by the conclusions of the European Council in March and by the Versailles Declaration. It also lays the ground for future cooperation with Azerbaijan on green transition and renewable energy. And I conclude reiterating that we remain available to the European Parliament for further exchanges on this issue as requested. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Skupa. And Mr. Skupa is team leader for Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Belarus within the Europe and Central Asia Directorate in the External Action Service. We continue now with Mrs. Bella Nestorova, and she is team leader in the Commission's DG NEAR Unit C2. So, please, floor is yours.
I would like to thank the Rapporteur, Mrs. Zovko, for the report on EU-Azerbaijan relations and the Committee on Foreign Affairs and the European Parliament for the opportunity to take the floor on behalf of the Commission. With our EU assistance, we have acted fast to help conflict-affected populations, both in Armenia and Azerbaijan, despite the challenges and the fast-changing context. Since the start of the 2020 hostilities, we have provided over 17 million of humanitarian assistance to support basic needs, livelihoods and shelter of conflict-affected people, mental health services, and protection of children and women. We also provided humanitarian support for displaced persons in Armenia during the recent escalations in September. We also provide support for humanitarian demining, both in Azerbaijan and Armenia. The EU is actually currently the largest donor for demining in Azerbaijan. Beyond humanitarian assistance, we also support dialogue and people-to-people contacts across the conflict divides in the Eastern Partnership countries through the regional EU for Dialogue program. EU relations with Azerbaijan have been marked indeed by the signature of the new Energy Memorandum of Understanding in July this year, which underpins joint efforts to secure additional gas volumes for the EU. In the framework of the Energy Memorandum of Understanding, as well as the Economic and Investment Plan, we're already delivering, together with European financial institutions, on energy-saving solutions in Azerbaijan. We're ready to further support renewable energy and energy efficiency investments, as well as digital and transport connectivity, in line with the economic investment plan flagships. The EU is also the biggest reform partner in Azerbaijan and brings best practices and experience to a wide range of sectors through peer-to-peer training and exchanges with the EU member states' public administrations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we also have some of our colleagues who want to take floor. Please, Mr. Kroschel.
Thank you, Chair. Now I'm speaking on myself, on my own behalf. So, on Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh issue, I would like to stress that we need to have a clear distinction in the report between what was going on in the Nagorno-Karabakh story and what is now going on the ground in these aggressive actions by the Azerbaijan. So these are two separate stories, and I think this should be part of the report. On the gas and energy, I would call once again, we should not repeat mistakes with Russia and mistakes which we are doing with China. We have a lot of other suppliers in this part of diversification which are closer to us, also from our ideological and values point of view. So we should be very careful not to proclaim someone being a strategic partner just because it has a gas, which we need at the moment. I think that a lot of our activities, even though I completely understand what realpolitik means, I still believe that we should stand with our values, because let's not forget our values are defended also in Ukraine, and we are deeply involved in this war because we believe that our values need to be defended. So they should be defended also in relation to the other partners, even those who have other interests, and they have some advantages which are useful for us. On the last point, I think that we should also stress the issue of prisoners of war, aggression which happened in the past few weeks, and executions of prisoners of war. So I think this is something which cannot be accepted by the European Union and should be clearly pointed out by our report. So these are some of my comments, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Georgios Kyrtsos, please, floor is yours.
Thank you, President. I think that the Rapporteur is doing a fine job. Of course, we all are worried about the state of the political system in Azerbaijan, but Aliyev is a family name that originates from the leadership of the Soviet Union, so we shouldn't expect too much. But I think we can find a common approach in underlining what our objectives are in terms of human rights, democratic rights, the rights of the opposition, etc. I have a question, and I don't know if you can answer it or send me some relative information. We need this strategic partnership in terms of energy collaboration. Any move that Azerbaijan is doing away from Russia is positive for us because we have an energy war with Russia. But first of all, what are our quantitative objectives? Are they sending more gas? Are they about to send? And how do you, let's say, evaluate the political, the strategic situation? Are they really moving away from Russia? They want to be more independent as they used to be part of the Soviet Union. How is their relationship, which is very warm, with Turkey developing? And is Turkey going to affect energy supplies in one way or the other? Any information about this is more than welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Of course, later, Rapporteur will give full answer to your question. So please, now, Mr. Sanchez-Amor, floor is yours.
Gracias. Thank you very much. My colleagues have just spoken, and they have been very tactful and diplomatic when they have underlined what the Commission didn't mention. I cannot believe that the European Commission can come here and give a presentation on Azerbaijan and not mention human rights. I cannot believe that you've come here to this room. There are people who have been deprived of their citizenship, expelled from the country, and they've been waiting for a message from the EU. I'm sorry, madam. We all understand the delicate situation and our energy needs at the moment, but we are talking about a complete and brutal abandonment of the obligation that is enshrined in the treaties. In the treaties, I mean, it's not, of course, and I think to have an external foreign policy that is devoid of values is shameful. Now, and I think the same adjective applies to the president when she visited Azerbaijan. I think my colleagues have been quite polite, and I'm sorry that I'm being perhaps a bit blunter, but I think it's unacceptable that the Commission comes here to take part in a debate on Azerbaijan and doesn't mention human rights. Now, a question to either of the representatives, whether the Council or the Commission. What is your official position on the corridor? What is your position on it? Do you think, or what do you think that the EU should do, this extraterritorial corridor that would impinge on the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Armenia and then would have an effect on the border with Iran? So let us really talk about what really counts. Human rights and the realpolitik that you are so energetically applying and with such zeal. So perhaps you could talk about this corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Nestorova, please, your comments.
I can only subscribe to what was already said by the External Action Service, that human values do underpin our relations with Azerbaijan, and this is the political mandate that we already have from the EU. And on the corridor, I'm not sure which corridor the colleague referred to, maybe also the External Action Service, but would like to comment, but happy to revert back.
Dear colleagues, any further questions or comments from you? And, External Action Service also wants to add something.
Okay, just if I may, just to mention that we were hand in hand with the Commission, so we also shared our speaking points. It was not forgotten by the Commission. By the way, the ES is the service of the High Representative and by the Vice President of the Commission as well. On the corridor, this is not for us to express any opinion. The role we have here, and it's at the highest level, is to put the parties on and facilitate a dialogue for a peace treaty. It's up to the sides to discuss these issues. And we can just facilitate, and I think what has been achieved so far in putting them around the negotiating table is quite already an achievement. And we continue on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Clement, you wanted to ask?
Thank you, Chair. We are talking about the corridor between Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan. There are many corridors in Europe. I hope that you know that, this, many corridors. And we sent also our observers to this part of the Armenia. So why is their function there? To be like observers, to be like taking the notes, minutes, what's going on, or what's the purpose, what's the strategic purpose of this mission there? Even in this, I must say that I'm outraged by the fact that External Action Service doesn't know which corridor we are talking about, because this is one of the major geopolitical issues of the region. This could be a cause for the next great war in Central Asia or in this Southern Caucasus part of Europe. And this is, I would say, unacceptable by the fact that we should know what we are talking about. Thank you.
Yes, please, External Action Service.
Apologies for coming back on this. Of course, we know what corridors it is, the Zanzegur corridor you were referring to. Our monitors are not along this corridor, which do not exist on the ground. They are on the Armenian side of the Armenia-Azerbaijan international border, and they are there to observe and build confidence that the sides are respecting the ceasefire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, floor goes back to Rapporteur, please, Mrs. Zovko.
Right. Thank you very much. As you can see, this is a very sensitive report and the sensitive debate as well. That's why we will continue also with my colleague. And it was not easy to put all these concerns in a draft report. Of course, I'm welcoming all your amendments. I listened carefully, and one thing that will be underlined in this report is on human rights and the rule of law. We will not step back, regardless of the needs for the energy that the European Union is facing. On the issue of European monitoring mission, I think that, and I welcomed recent efforts by President Michel and also President Macron, and these meetings between two presidents of Armenia and Azerbaijan are sending strong signals that we are also trying to get back these countries get away from Russia and from malicious influence of the other actors. So this is something that we should take into concern, and also the sensitive issue of Nagorno-Karabakh and of the return of refugees, of the protection of cultural heritage and religious heritage. It's something that should not be used and abused to progress with the hatreds between the communities. So rest assured that I'm open for your comments, for your amendments, and also finally I would like to also stress that our mission is to be equidistant as European Parliament, not to take sides, and to try our best as well to facilitate the dialogue between the countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Rapporteur. And the deadline for amendments on this report will be on the 15th of November at 11 a.m. And the vote in AFET is planned to take place in January 23. So, well, dear colleagues, we continue with the EU-Armenia relations. And obviously there is a link with our previous discussion on the report on EU-Azerbaijan relations. The two reports both include the part on conflict resolution and normalization of Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, and it will be therefore important to ensure a consistent position across the two reports. I will not repeat what I already mentioned a few minutes ago on the resolution of the conflict with Azerbaijan and on the need to achieve a sustainable and comprehensive peace. Let me only add that in the light of the military clashes that broke out again on 12th of September, affecting Armenian sovereign territory, issues such as territorial integrity, the investigation and prosecution of war crimes, and border demarcation have become crucial for Armenia. In this context, the upcoming deployment of EU monitors to the Armenian side of the Armenia-Azerbaijan border is an important development that underlines the EU's commitment to the security, stability and peace in the South Caucasus. This draft is much more than just a conflict report, however. Our relationship has deepened since the entry into force of comprehensive and enhanced partnership agreement last year. We work together on a variety of issues, including rule of law, public safety, education, employment opportunities, and many more. And it is therefore important to address the progress of democratic reforms in Armenia, which the EU continues to support as the leading donor. And now I invite the rapporteur, Andrey Kovatchev, to present his report. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dear colleagues, dear Željana, Thank you for the good cooperation on this report. Many things are the same because we are talking about the same conflict, and I will try not to repeat, but at the beginning I would like to tell you that since 13 years when I'm in this committee, we fight it here indeed for every word when we talk about the conflict. We emphasize the three basic principles. This I call it Minsk Group co-shares principle, non-use of force, territorial integrity, and self-determination. And we saw that in 2020, one of these basic principles was violated, and facts was done by force. Now, if we are like it or not, we need to live with this reality. But historically, I don't think both sides. There's one side which is not is fully innocent. For years, also in this house, there was this push. Let's be balanced, but I think we should be objective. What is happening? The facts cannot be to balance the facts. If something is happened, you should also mention like this. As I mentioned, in 2020, we saw one of these basic principles, non-use of force, to be violated. And as many of us, we agree that Russia is not a fair mediator. The only purpose of or aim of Russia is to increase the impact in the region, to stay, to have foot on the ground, to extend and fulfill the wish of Putin to create something like new EU-SSR, including also Armenia, to weaken Armenia so much that they have no other choice than maybe to join with Belarus this union of states. On some elements on the again on the conflict. What is to be expected? Very important topic is the delimitation of the border. I welcome that the both sides agreed on the Almaty Declaration that the administrative border of the former Soviet Republic is then the state border. And now the devil is in the details. Which map to be used, from 1929 or from 1975? I know that the next meeting of the working group is for the 4th and 5th of November in Brussels. And this topic is extremely important. The demarcation of the delimitation of the border. Demarcation will take more time, but delimitation of the border so that it's very clear the sovereign territory of the both sides. And because this is one of the preconditions also for the peace treaty to know where the border is. The second crucial issue, many colleagues already mentioned, is the so-called corridor between Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan. Here is also the Russian interest to have a corridor which is avoiding the sanctions in the north, but from the south side to have an uncontrolled corridor. Because in the ceasefire treaty they had this wording that there should be a connectivity. There should be a connectivity between Azerbaijan and Nakhchivan. And now again the devil is in the detail. What it means under connectivity, under Russian control, under connectivity under Russian control. And the one side is thinking about something like exterritorial, but this is a sovereign territory of Armenia, and they should, I mean, this is, as the colleagues from the institution are saying, this is up to them. But it's also a geopolitical, extremely important topic, as many colleagues mentioned here. Armenia is intending to open 2 checkpoints on the Azeri side and 1 checkpoint on the Nakhchivan, and then the Azeris can go through the territory of Armenia. But as I understood, the Azerbaijan side is thinking about uncontrolled access, which is this topic, the delimitation of the border and the rights and the guarantee of the Armenian people in Nagorno-Karabakh, which are between 80 to 120,000. I heard about these numbers, between 80 and 120,000, are the most crucial points which they need to deal. So as I mentioned, I do not consider Russia as a fair mediator, and I welcome the more engagement of European Union. These 40 experts, which part of them are from the Georgia mission, going now on the border with a mandate of 2 months. They have a mandate only for 2 months, and they need to come with a report on in December. Is a good step. As I understood, the next meeting, Aliyev-Pashinyan, is on the 31st of October in Sochi, again with Putin. Let's see what will come out from this. This is on the conflict what I would like to share with you, and then for sure the report address also many other points, especially the relations of Armenia with the neighbors. We are calling for normalization with Turkey. There are 2 points on air cargo and on the opening of the terrestrial border for third nationals. And I hope very much that Turkey will implement this and not make it conditional by something else. As usual, Turkey is doing like the famous protocols from Switzerland, which was not ratified because of Azerbaijan. On democracy, rule of law and good governance, the entry into force of the EU-Armenia Comprehensive and Enhanced Partnership Agreement, as well as the progress made with domestic reforms, has been also noted. I'm planning to introduce amendments on additional important areas such as implementation of Armenia's national strategy for judiciary and legal reform and its national anti-corruption strategy. Here the European Union is supporting financially these reforms. The section of human rights and fundamental freedom will be further strengthened by the amendments proposed to include provision on gender equality, combating violence against women, and the protection of LGBTI community. I was shocked by this very tragical double suicide committed by 2 gay people last week in Yerevan, and I'm open. I saw also the letter of the intergroup of LGBTIQ. I'm open here on the wording to find the appropriate wording in the amendments on this topic. I saw that they need to be implement the recommendation on discrimination and hate crimes, and that Armenia is one of the largest deficit in legislation protecting LGBTIQ people. So this is something which is for sure from me to be supported. The report emphasizes on the positive economic and trade between Armenia and the European Union, noting the growing trade with us. On sectoral cooperation, an important area will be included in the amendments on Armenia's association with the Horizon Europe. So there are many also topics, as you very well noted in a draft. This is a draft report. It's not possible to put everything, but I'm very open to work with all of you on the specific issues to make the report objective, and to call on the European institutions and on the both sides for fair peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rapporteur. And now we continue with please. And now we continue with shadow rapporteurs from SND. Mr. Heysel is here, but I see that there will be replacement.
Yes, my colleague is
Mrs.
not
Santos,
here,
please.
is replaced by me. He wrote a text that I'm going to read. First of all, let me thank the rapporteur for the draft report and the effort to use a balanced wording in many parts of the text. Strong presence of EU in the region is of utmost importance. EU has been a long-time peace supporter in Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and I appreciate that this is highlighted in the report, especially nowadays when Russia's aggression on Ukraine showcased its unreliability or strong position on this is crucial. We need to show a clear leadership in order to prevent strengthening influence of other global actors such as Iran, Turkey, or Russia. I aim to elaborate on this in some of my amendments. I agree that peace in the region must be established via diplomatic channels and negotiations, not through military actions. Here, Europe should play an active role. When it comes to conflict, it is important to carefully assess any possible breaches of international law, especially when it comes to the reported torture of the prisoners by Azerbaijan. We must strongly condemn any destruction of cultural heritage, and damage already made should be immediately investigated. While I appreciate the reforms that Armenia implemented, we must continue to be vigilant in our efforts to ensure that democratic principles such as rule of law and functioning of democratic institutes, as well as social, educational, and health services for all parts of society are ensured. In regards to CEPA, I think we should address its implementation and how we can further deepen our relations with Armenia. Last but not least, one more general comment, considering that draft reports on EU relations with Armenia and Azerbaijan are closely linked, especially through the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. I find it important to keep the wording in the key paragraphs in both documents aligned. I sum it up. I plan to table amendments to elaborate on some parts and cover few additional issues, but overall, I think that the draft report is going in the right direction, and I'm looking forward to our shadow meetings.
Thank you very much. From Renew Group, Petras Austrevicius, please.
Thank you, Chair. And my pleasure is to read a note and statement on behalf of my colleague Nathalie Loiseau, who is a shadow on behalf of Renew Europe. Dear members, apologies for not being here in person. There are some points I would like to raise on the draft report. In my opinion, the draft report really needs to be rebalanced. We cannot put Armenia and Azerbaijan on an equal footing when it comes to the conflict or in the terms of the violation of the ceasefire or the destruction of cultural heritage. Azerbaijan has repeatedly attacked the sovereign territory of Armenia in violation of international law. We need more guarantees from Azerbaijan if we want a lasting peace between the two countries, and the European Union must play an active role in this. That is why I will propose amendments to rebalance the draft report to strengthen the wording of on foreign interferences by Russia and Turkey, and to strengthen the paragraph on the destruction of cultural heritage with facts. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to working with the rapporteur and co-rapporteurs. That was the message from Nathalie Loiseau. Thank you.
Thank you, Petras. Greens, is there any representative from Greens who wants to take floor? Doesn't look like this. ID, Jaak Madison, please.
Aitäh, juhataja. Thanks so much, Chair. Unfortunately, we don't have shadow rapporteur just now here, but I would like to also repeat, as some of our colleagues already mentioned, that it is unacceptable that in the European countries there is a military conflict, and even if there are misunderstandings or different opinions about the borders. Yes, we have many countries in Europe who are still like in the
in the conflict in the verbs about the borders, but there's not been very many military conflicts. If the one side is deciding to attack the neighborhood country only because there are misunderstandings about the 75 or 92 agreement of the borders. So that's why there is a full support by the most of our group members to Armenia. And I'm really looking forward that we have deeper cooperation between the European countries and with Armenia, that Armenia shouldn't hope too much for the Russian military help. We know it will be very difficult in the last 30 years where Armenia is a very small country between two big neighbors, and one is Azerbaijan and second is Russia, and Russia has been like some kind of, the bigger friend against Azerbaijan and to be on the side of Armenia. But today we have seen that Russia can never ever be as a accountable partner and trustable partner. So that's why I'm really hoping that Armenia is developing on the right way, and also the other European countries are really helping them to go on the right way. So that's why I'm really hoping that you're doing well, and we have to do everything to really prevent any other military reactions by Azerbaijan. Thanks so much.
Thank you. ECR? Not the case. GUE? No. Mr. Castaldo, please.
Thank you very much once more, dear Chair, and thanks again to our rapporteur. Thank you, Andrey, for the holistic draft report that you are presenting to us today. I consider it as in line with the position taken by several colleagues during the debate on the long-lasting conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan in the last plenary. And it clearly states that the conflict was triggered by the Azeri aggression, and points out the inflammatory rhetoric used by Baku, as well as the barbaric extrajudicial killing of Armenian prisoners of war. I would like to insist once more on the fact that we must stand firm in demanding a comprehensive peace treaty includes provisions on the territorial integrity of Armenia and on the safety of the population living in the conflict-afflicted area in and around Nagorno-Karabakh. Moreover, I believe that the final version of this report should elaborate further on the implications of the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine on the South Caucasus as well. Indeed, the treaty signed by President Aliyev and President Putin just a day before the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine, it's a clear sign of the rapprochement between Baku and Moscow that are ongoing. Quoting President Aliyev, we can say that this treaty brought the relationship between the parties to the level of an alliance, as it encourages both states to hold the same or similar positions on topical international issues, and it obliges them to refrain from any actions that damage the strategic partnership and allied relations of the two states. It goes without saying that Russia cannot be considered as an impartial mediator, therefore. And so I believe that we should insist more on the role that our union can play and must play in mediating between Baku and Yerevan. At the same time, I will also present some amendments that call for a stronger support to the Armenian Authority and civil society in their struggles for reforms, including on LGBTI plus rights. And I was happy to hear that you already mentioned that, especially in light of the tragic news of the suicide of a young Armenian couple, because this is the best way to grant the political support they need for remaining on the right track, despite the highly challenging scenario that they are confronted with. And I can tell you that as an intergroup, we are already in touch also with the civil society, the association on the ground. So we will also table a set of amendments to enrich the report in that regard, and we count a lot on your support. I'm sure we will work very well together with all the other colleagues, and that the final text of the report would represent a milestone in EU-Armenia relationship. Thank you very much. Blagodaria.
Thank you very much. And now we continue with representatives of External Action Service and Commission. Please, Mr. Gianmarco Scuppa.
Thank you, and thanks to the rapporteurs. But I will not repeat what I already said before on the normalization process between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which is, of course, also relevant for this discussion on Armenia. We also see a normalization process in EU-Turkey relations even if also at an initial stage. The EU supports it and encourages both parties to progress with concrete steps. Despite the various internal and external crises the country continues to face since a couple of years, Armenia has demonstrated its commitment to democracy and good governance, including justice reform and the fight against corruption. We welcome, in this respect, the inclusive approach adopted by the Armenian government in its reform process, with significant involvement of the civil society. This deserves to be supported by the EU. In fact, since the Velvet Revolution in 2018, Armenia is looking towards the EU as a model and a key partner for democratic reforms and the country modernization. The Comprehensive and Enhanced Partnership Agreement, the CEPA, that entered into force in March 2021, is considered by the Armenian government as its blueprint for domestic reform. And CEPA indeed can play an important role for Armenia, in particular through legislative approximation to EU norms in many sectors. We can say that CEPA is really a milestone in EU-Armenia relations, as it has strengthened our relations and intensified the dialogue we have with Armenia, which now concerns a wide range of sectors and is increasingly going in depth. I close here. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mrs. Bella Nestorova, please.
I would like to thank the Rapporteur, Mr. Kovatchev, for the report on EU-Armenia relations, and I would like to complement the words of my colleagues from the External Action Service and speak more about our EU cooperation assistance. I'm also not going to repeat the points that I expressed before on the humanitarian assistance we provide for both countries, on dialogue and people-to-people contacts. For Armenia, we support implementing the ambitious reform agenda under the Comprehensive and Enhanced Partnership Agreement between the European Union and Armenia. We also support reforms. Under that, we support reforms for resilient and accountable institutions in line with CEPA, in particular reforms towards inclusive, accountable and effective service delivery and good governance, rule of law, security and migration. We also support the inclusive and sustainable socio-economic recovery of the southern regions of Armenia, including through a Team Europe approach, which means working with EU member states. When it comes to monitoring and implementation of these reforms, civil society has been a key partner to the EU in Armenia, and we also support the recently established civil society CEPA monitoring platform. The Economic and Investment Plan and its priority flagship investments are rapidly delivering concrete results in Armenia. We're already delivering, together with European financial institutions, on support to SMEs, access to finance, the green transition in Yerevan, and the socio-economic development of Armenia's southern regions. We're ready to further support investments in education, as well as other projects in line with the Economic Investment Plan flagship initiatives for Armenia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No further comments from colleagues. If it's not the case, then floor goes back to Mr. Rapporteur, Mr. Kovatchev, please.
Thank you very much to all colleagues and to the European institutions. I can only say I agree with all comments on what was made done, and I'm looking forward for the amendments and for the shadow rapporteur meetings where we are going to discuss the final wording on which I'm sure we are going to agree easily. I like to mention three points which I forgot. There are still at least 33 prisoners of war or detainees in Azerbaijan which need to be unconditionally released and sent back to their families. This is the position of the European Parliament because we had a special resolution adopted with a big majority in the plenary on this, and Azerbaijan is still not delivering on all prisoners of war. And as I told you, there are 33 which are confirmed with name cases. On visa, I would say facilitation, maybe EU and the institutions can say some words if there is some progress to be expected. And on cases of police misuse of or overuse of force, Armenia needs to investigate all these cases, that there is no doubt that police is not used for political repressions in Armenia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rapporteur. And I remind you that the deadline for the amendments on this report is on the 15th of November at 11 a.m. and the vote in AFET is scheduled to take place in January 23. Dear colleagues, thank you very much. We have now 19 minutes break, so that 10:30 we will continue with issues related to developments in Afghanistan. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I give you